Welcome to Clarifying Society, where we dive deep into the social structures that shape our everyday lives. I'm your host, Clara Williams, and today we're exploring a topic that touches millions of families but often remains invisible in mainstream conversations: the third shift regarding single motherhood. When we talk about work, we usually think about the first shift, a 9-to-5 job. Then there's the second shift, a term sociologist Arlie Hochschild coined to describe the housework and childcare that happens after the workday ends. But there's a third shift too, one that's even harder to see: the emotional labor that holds families and relationships together. Today, we're examining how single mothers navigate this third shift and how race, class, and intersectionality shape their experiences. This research comes from my personal sociology project, which asks crucial questions about who carries the emotional weight of our society and why. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is the third shift? The third shift refers to the invisible emotional work that goes into managing relationships, soothing tensions, anticipating needs, and maintaining family well-being. It's remembering birthdays, noticing when your child seems withdrawn, managing everyone's feelings during conflicts, and carrying the mental load of what needs to happen for your household to function smoothly. For single mothers, this labor intensifies. Without a partner to share the emotional load, single mothers become the sole emotional manager of their own household. They're the only ones tracking their child's emotional needs, school concerns, social development, and psychological well-being. But here's where it gets more complex. This experience isn't just universal. The third shift looks different depending on your race, your class, and your access to resources. A white upper middle class single mother has a vastly different experience than a Black or Latina single mother working multiple low-wage jobs. My research draws on intersectionality theory, originally developed by legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw. Intersectionality helps us understand that our identities don't just exist in isolation. Being a woman intersects with being a person of color, with being poor or wealthy, and with being a single parent. These identities overlap and create unique experiences of privilege and oppression. So when we ask how single mothers experience the third shift, we can't give one answer. We have to look at how race and class shape that experience. One of my key research questions asks, how does emotional labor differ between white women and women of color who are single mothers? The research reveals significant differences rooted in historical and structural inequalities. White single mothers, while certainly facing challenges, often have access to social capital and resources that women of color may not. They're more likely to receive sympathy rather than stigma, more likely to access quality childcare, more likely to have family wealth to fall back on during crises. Women of color, particularly Black and Latina single mothers, face what sociologists call controlling images, stereotypes that paint them as irresponsible, lazy, or morally deficient. Think about the welfare queen stereotype that emerged in the 1980s and continues to shape policy and public perception today. These stereotypes don't just hurt feelings, they have real material consequences. They affect hiring decisions, access to housing, interactions with school and social services, and even childhood welfare investigations. Let's not even stop there. There's another layer as well. Women of color single mothers often carry what scholars call the strong Black woman, or superwoman schema. The expectation that they should be able to handle everything without complaint, without support, without breaking down. This creates an additional emotional burden. Not only they must do the work, but they must do it while appearing invulnerable. Meanwhile, their emotional labor extends beyond their own household. Many women of color single mothers are also caring for their extended family members, serving as the emotional anchors for their communities, and navigating systems, schools, healthcare, criminal justice, that weren't designed with them in mind and often work against them. Joan Acker's theory of gendered organizations help us understand this dynamic. Acker argued that our organizations aren't neutral spaces. They're structured in ways that reflect and reproduce gender inequality. For single mothers of color, these gendered organizations intersect with racialized structures, creating what Crenshaw calls the margins, spaces where multiple systems of oppression overlap. My third research question tackles class. How can socioeconomics change how women feel in society when it comes to raising a child on their own? Economic security transforms the experience of single motherhood. A single mother who's a lawyer or a doctor faces challenges, of course, but she can afford quality childcare, tutors, therapy for her children, time off when emergencies arise. Her emotional labor is real, but she has the resources to lighten the load. Compare that to a single mother working on 2 minimum wage jobs just to keep the lights on. Her emotional labor compounds with economic stress. She's worrying about making rent, about whether there's enough food, about what happens if her car breaks down or a child gets sick and she can't miss work. The third shift becomes overwhelming because emotional management happens in the context of constant crisis. And here's what the research on gender in the labor market tells us. Women, especially women of color, are overrepresented in low-wage work. They're the home health aides, the retail workers, the food service employees. These jobs don't just pay less, they're often unstable with unpredictable schedules that make childcare arrangements nearly impossible. And don't be fooled here. There's cruel irony here as well. Many of these single mothers are doing emotional labor for pay, caring for other people's children, other people's elderly parents, other people's homes, while struggling to meet their own family's emotional needs. They're expected to be warm, nurturing, and attentive at work, then come home and do it all over again without the resources or the support they really need. Class also affects access to support systems. Wealthier single mothers can pay for therapy, join parent support groups, take self-care vacations. Poor single mothers might not even have the reliable internet access, much less time or money for therapeutic support. The third shift includes navigating under-resourced schools, unsafe neighborhoods, and the constant stress of economic precarity. Another critical question I raise is, how are single mothers allocating their time between the house and the workforce? The data paints a stark picture. Single mothers work longer hours than married mothers, both in paid employment and in household labor. They're more likely to work evening and weekend shifts. They have less leisure time, less sleep, and higher rates of stress-related health problems. But it's not just the quantity of time, it's the quality of fragmentation. Single mothers describe feeling like they're constantly in motion, but never catching up. They're mentally planning dinner while at work, checking homework during their lunch break, responding to their child's emotional crisis via text between meetings. It's all just a blur. This fragmentation is part of the third shift. It's the mental load of orchestrating everything, of being the only person who remembers the permission slip, the doctor's appointment, the fact that your teenager seemed to be sad this morning. There's no one to tag in, no partner to say, I've got this, you can go ahead and rest. And for many single mothers, especially those in lower wage work, employers don't accommodate these realities. They face disciplinary action for leaving work when their child is sick, they lose hours if they can't find childcare, they're passed over for promotions because they're perceived as unreliable, even though they're actually performing heroic feats of time management every single day. A lot of why I wanted to conduct this research was actually solely because I'm a product of a single mother. My dad passed away when I was 13 due to a sudden heart attack, leaving my mom with me, my brother, the house, and all the burdens that come with it. I wanted to ask her some questions about her personal experience with single motherhood. We have a special guest. It is my mom. So Mom, I would like you to kind of introduce yourself and explain your job. So go for it.
Well, my first job is teaching, and I teach vocal music and AP Music Theory and Honors Theory too, and it's a full-time job because of all the extracurriculars too. You know, I teach my regular classes from 8:30 to 3:30, and then I kind of start a second job after that, at least 3 to 4 days every week until 7 p.m.
Even today, for example, I was home and Mom was not home until maybe half an hour later, 7:30.
Yeah, I got home at 7:30. My job finished at 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of typical. The only night I don't do that is Wednesday night, and that's it. And then first semester I have Fridays free, but second semester I don't the entire semester.
Yes.
So that's kind of how my work life goes, and then I have my home life, of balancing, figuring it out for managing a family, and trying to like do things for myself, like kind of like, for example, like after I've worked till 7:30 and then I do home life with my kids, or we kind of always arranged so that we would have special family time.
When we were at
start
home
at like 7 when everybody was at home. Even when Steve was here, we'd start our family things at 7. We'd put like a real, like, I don't know, fence around that time, and then at 9, when you were little, we'd go to bed, you'd go to bed, and then we'd try to have some kind of fun time from like 10 to 11 and then start again, because you kind of have to have some kind of time for yourself. But carving time out for myself is usually a pretty low priority, even though I want to do it, I just don't always get to do it.
Right. And I feel like having to be like a single mom unannounced, like how was that? I feel like.
Well, I mean, I don't think you thought I was panicked. I hope you didn't.
I never thought that.
But like just thinking about making the decisions, I guess, is the hardest thing for me. Not having someone to plan things with, or to you're constantly in charge. You're never off the clock. No. As far as like, well, if I want to do something, it's up to me to make sure it happens for the family. If I want to make sure we can afford something, it's up to me to make sure we have the money.
Right.
I run all the household budgets, all the investments. If someone needs a car, I run all, paying for all the insurances and buying the cars and paying for school and planning the meals if we even have a meal. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I used to be very good about that, but now that you're older, we don't.
Yes.
As much we rely on other people for that sometimes, but like just always being on and in charge was something I wasn't really expecting to do. I always had Steve to help me. We always do things like that together, and we kind of had this vision of how our family would move forward. And once I lost Dad, I couldn't have that plan be the reality anymore. And like for instance, like when we were going to go take you to that concert in Chicago, and it was Daddy got those tickets and he was going to drive you, and I had never driven in Chicago. But it's like, I decide I can do that and then do it, or we don't get to do those things. So you kind of have to pull yourself up from your bootstraps and be the man and the lady of the house. And I can drive in Chicago.
You can.
You know what I mean? But that stuff is really scary at first and really hard to do. And thankfully we were smart with a lot of things that makes it seem like it's easy, but there's still a lot of decisions and a lot of worry that I have to take on myself that I don't have like a partner to help me with.
Yeah. And do you feel like with me and Parker, who is my brother, going to college, do you feel like your life is easier, harder, or about the same? Like, how did you handle the transition?
It shifted. I do have more time to complete my job without having to do it at different hours. Like, I might stay at work and finish my grading instead of coming home and cooking for you, waiting for you to go to bed, and then staying up and doing my job some more. Where now with you in college, I can go ahead and complete my tasks more completely, maybe because you're busy as well, and your hours aren't the same. It's not like we're trying to all be at the house and live life together that way. So in that way, it's a different, maybe a little lighter. I feel more like at ease because everyone has their own schedule and is in charge of it, where I'm not in charge of everyone's schedule anymore. Right. Or being present at specific times that don't always work with my job.
Yes.
And now I don't really have to do that. However, probably, it's weird to be living in a huge house by yourself, and like you come home and you're like, oh, I have dinner just for myself now, and I don't have to think about you, but I do have to think about you getting groceries and Parker becoming
adults.
Figuring out how to manage the world. But that's a different type of parenting. It's quite fulfilling actually, because you guys are doing that. But I do parent you differently than I did when you were in the house. So I have a lot of more free time as far as that's concerned, but I also I also think that's challenging too, because it's like you want your life to be meaningful and you need to have meaning past your husband and your kids, and everybody struggles with that, but it's just more apparent. And and like thinking like with the holidays coming up, like thinking about traditions that we would have been able to do together or that we plan to do together that we just are unavailable to us. We've made new traditions and we've survived that really well, but it's only because I think that I've made a conscious decision to really live life with a new and different family structure, being a good mentor to you and try to be a good example. And but there's pressure that comes with that too, I guess. But I know you're my I guess my family's a big priority to me, so getting my work done, doing really well at that, and then making sure my family is getting what they need, but also growing and being able to do fun things, even though we're just 3 instead of 4.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to maybe like single moms who've either experienced the same hardship as you with it being unannounced? What would you give them? Because even your mom, went through a divorce and also was a single mom for some time before Papa.
Yeah, that's
so I mean, what advice would you give? I know that's a big question,
I
but
think that's a great question, because I think my mom did do this, and she had less means than I did, for sure, than I do, for sure. That you ultimately, your children need you to be their mother. Whatever that looks like. That might be that you have to be their mother and their father. Now, I'll never be able to be what Steve was, but I still have to fill some of that role.
Yeah.
And I will never fill it completely the same way he could have. But the fact that you have to realize that your kids need you to be the adult. You need to lead. You need to pull yourself up. And as hard as that is, they're looking to you. And I think it's also helps them learn how to handle adversity in their lives.
Yeah.
Because I guess you could just stop. I could have curled up in a ball and said, well, Dad's gone and I can't handle this. But that's just not that's not the right thing, I think, to do. I think you have to show up. You have to keep going. You have to find a way to be fulfilled so that you can be a fulfilling parent. And I think that's really important, because your kids don't need you to be their friend. They have friends. They need you to be a great example and a good mentor and the mother and the leader. And you have to they need that.
Yeah.
It doesn't work any other way.
All right. Beautiful. Thanks, Mom.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking me to be on your show.
Anytime. Throughout this discussion, we've touched on stereotypes, but let's just address them directly. Single mothers, particularly women of color, face intense social stigma. This ideal family in American culture is still imagined as nuclear. Married heterosexual parents, usually white, middle class, with the mother as the primary caregiver and the father as primary breadwinner. This has always been the societal norm. Single mothers are asked, "Where's the father?" as if his absence is automatically a failure on her part. They're subjected to judgment about their choices, their parenting, and their worthiness. These stereotypes have policy implications. Welfare reform in the 1900s was explicitly designed around the idea that single mothers were morally problematic and needed to be pushed into marriage and work. What was the result? Policies that made it harder for poor single mothers to access support while doing nothing but address just the structural inequalities, like wage gaps, lack of affordable childcare, discriminating hiring practices. That made their lives that much more difficult in the first place. For women of color single mothers, these stereotypes intersect with racist imagery. The welfare queen, the baby mama, the irresponsible Latina mother. These controlling images justify neglect and punishment rather than support. They make it easier for society to blame individual mothers rather than examining the systems that failed them. Overall, I bring something invaluable to this research: personal experience. As I noted before in our interview, I come from a single mother household and would love to take a deeper dive on how much do single mothers really emotionally carry versus the average household. This is what makes sociology powerful. It's not just abstract theory. It's a tool for understanding our own lives and the lives of people we love. My curiosity sparked from learning about the labor market, from suddenly having language that I learned in class, the third shift, for something I witnessed but couldn't even name. And that's the promise of sociological research. It makes the invisible visible. It names the patterns that shape our lives. It connects personal troubles to public issues, showing us that what feels like individual failure is often just systematic inequality. When single mothers struggle, it's not because they're not working hard enough. It's because we built a society that expects them to do the impossible, to be sole breadwinners and sole caregivers, to manage all the emotional labor without support, and while doing it all while facing discrimination and stigma. So where do we go from here? First, we need to recognize that the third shift as real work. Emotional labor isn't optional, it's essential to human flourishing. But right now, it's undervalued and unevenly distributed. Second, we need policies that support single mothers, living wages, affordable childcare, paid family leave, flexible work arrangements, robust social safety nets. These aren't just handouts though, they're investments in families and communities. Third, we need to be challenging these stereotypes. Single mothers aren't deficient at all. They're navigating structural inequalities with a lot of resilience. Our job isn't to judge them, but to support them instead as a united front. And finally, we just have to keep doing research. Even what I did with just simple going on Google Scholar just really helped in being able to listen to a lot of the wisdom we got from class. We need to keep asking questions, examining intersections, making visible of really what's been hidden this whole time, because knowledge is the first step toward change. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Clarifying Society. If you want to learn more about the third shift, intersectionality, and gender in the labor market, check out the sources in these notes coming up right on here on the screen, including work by Kimberly Crenshaw, Arlie Hochschild, and Joan Atkins. Until next time, let's just keep questioning, keep learning, and keep recognizing the invisible labor that holds our world together. Thank you.